The guest with this article, which is called Insightful Learning 2021, is Justina Mialik. She's team leader, and she will tell us if she's still teacher, but I said in the article team leader and teacher. I met Justina in March 2020 with the first group and the last one for now of school development course. It's an EUNEOS course, but with Forum Schule, an NGO from Germany. And well, okay, welcome Justina. So just let us know whatever you feel like about you and your school. And the first question is going to be, can you please break down the process of prototyping for us? How did you start using prototyping on purpose, let's call it?
Hello, Angela, and thank you for having me today. It was a very unexpected invitation I received recently that made my day. And I'm very pleased we can share those ideas that we have in common. And have to say at the same time, the whole inspiration for deciding to make our learning processes visible started actually in the moment we were about to leave Finnish training program for the teachers, because it was actually also the moment the outbreak of COVID-19 started. And I remember this day when you told us with other great teacher attending the training, the first thing you have to do when you come back home is you have to gather your people and let them know they are going to deal with something that will change and disturb the process of education. So we called it at that time confusion. And the first skill that was supposed to be learned and talked about and discussed and observed is how we, the teachers, the students, and also the parents who are deeply involved in the process of education are going to deal with the confusion. And I remember sitting on the train traveling around thinking of how to start making learning visible if I'm not going to see my students. And then you told us also in the last couple of days, the main role of the teacher is to design the classes. So in the moment I started adapting the role as a designer and leaving the role as a teacher, I came up with few ideas on how to create lesson prototypes and involve my students into these online learning processes that were at the very beginning demanding for all of us, I think. What we also did is we looked up to our partner schools in China. We looked up to Finnish systems and educators. We looked up to our partner school in the USA, in Vermont. We spoke to the teachers. We had some very good researchers done in team among our teachers and students, as well as literature review. I'm not really sure if I can actually recommend a book here in this interview, but one of my favorite ones is from John Hattie, Visible Learning and Teachers. Can you see it?
Yep, perfect, perfect.
So that would be my biggest advice at this point, to start with the book.
Thank you for sharing. Perfect. Actually, we have a course coming up. Coming up means it's developing, and it's called Coaching STEAM. And actually in the middle, it's not about STEAM so much as it is about what you showed, the title there, visibility, making the learning traceable. We recognize the process. Okay, you mentioned uncertainty. No, you mentioned confusion, which is a very strong emotion. Yeah, we heard Arto talking about confusion, and that was a very good moment with our course, School Development, for observing confusion and uncertainty. You gave us very interesting ideas about how you scheduled and planned that. I'm going to ask again if you can add anything else about how you made space as a team leader, as a teacher, how you made space for the uncertainty and vulnerability of prototyping to happen. As we know, new ideas do create a space of uncertainty and vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, to answer this question, I would basically use also one of the advices I was given in Finland. Designing requires time, and you gain the time in the moment you leave some space for it and you take decisions. Like you have to leave something behind you and get rid of some habits, routines you got used to before in order to get more space and be able to practice some new activities or replace the old ones with the new ones. So combining reflections, online discussions with our students, visible learning that we are gaining the knowledge of because we are still in the process of gaining this knowledge, and reading, loads of reading, help us to see how much space we need, right? Because we all different. The global schools are great. We are all international. We speak different languages, but we have to adapt to different learn curriculum and make sure our students proceed. So when you ask yourself the questions, not where you want them to be, what the question, how to help them at first, you will probably know how much space you need to reorganize yourself and transfer this learning into visible learning. And then, of course, as you have mentioned it a couple of times before, replace it and do not be afraid of replacing things, but still observing while doing so. That was the thing we started doing here and passing to our fellow colleagues as a first advice that was given.
Okay, so the space, that's very important. I don't know if they are connected, but in your document, I really liked, you mentioned learning objectives, but you also mentioned learning intentions or lessons intentions. So focusing on the process, that is also something you mentioned, rather than the outcome itself of the creativity and prototyping. What tools or how did you make space for feedback from the teachers? So you support this process. As you said, it's an ongoing process. It needs time. How did you make a space for that, for feedback? And teachers to feel safe, to offer feedback to themselves, to receive feedback?
Right. Well, expert teachers can easily identify the most important way which represents the subject they teach. So what we wanted to know is we wanted to know how they are dealing with their subjects in a homeschooling time, and ongoing meetings, reviews, online conferences we set up once a week, and then we extended the time we needed for them, as well as looking for problem-solving ideas in certain individual talks. Gave us a certain level of stability. So we knew we are gaining more time, more knowledge, we are sharing this knowledge, we are using some external observation, like looking up to other schools, talking to other teachers, and reading a lot, as I've said before. These were the basic indicators we are moving towards a good direction. And the intentions we had, and our teachers also shared them with us, were to influence the surface and deep student outcomes, to give them the space we had, to give them the time, and actually to share the expectations we have, because you not only as a teacher, but as a human being going to work, you have to work under different circumstances, and it was all new to us. So if you expect from your employee a certain behavior and this assistance in a certain way, you have to also be capable of delivering to your students in digital classrooms, which we are basically creating, and respond to their behavior. And sometimes it is a very good way to ask them about that. And they also assisted us. It was two-way cooperation, I think. So that was the best way to reach this goal.
Thank you. You mentioned a few times the space and time you are creating when you let go. of the things that served you but no longer serve you. Also, you mentioned the student agent. Students can help with these digital classes, and actually they are co-teaching or co-regulating the behavior in digital learning. One of my last questions, just before the last question, is how is your school more resilient now than before with the prototyping learning? Oops, I think we lost the internet connection a second. Hi, welcome back. Welcome back. Internet happens. That's why it is good to have recorded lessons sometimes as well. So I was asking, how is your school now more resilient than before? You need to check your microphone.
All right.
Yep,
Good.
perfect.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Good. Well, it took me a moment to consider this question, and I must say I did not know how to approach it in the way that would probably satisfy you and me. So, is the way I understood it correct? Do you mean if our community, is the question about the community and the capability we have to develop in order to withstand the shock? Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Very good approach or definition of resilience. Yes.
All right. So I do prefer to use this this explanation with expert teachers because we, of course, as teachers, we have to be experts in all areas that we are actually conducting and planning. Expert teachers have to simply monitor learning and provide feedback. We know all that it is happening in many schools now, but what was very helpful and profitable, not only for us, but basically for the students and the parents and the whole school community, was increasing the communication. So usually we send newsletter to the parents telling them what is happening at school, what kind of projects we are planning to, which objectives of learn curriculum are going to be approached. And we increased the number of them, like started sending them every 4 or 5 weeks to make sure they feel safe and they know that students are safe, even though the circumstances are very difficult. The second thing was we started asking students for more feedback, like online and digital feedback were included in many different aspects of our job. Sometimes these were small projects, sometimes these were political conferences we organized for the students to simply keep them aware of what was happening all over the world and how to differentiate the fake news from the real news. So we organized class conferences and spoke about the steps and made sure the students know, made sure the students can give us their knowledge they have. And we offered help and assistance. So there were some individual parent-teacher meetings as well, and a huge amount of work we included at the very beginning. And of course, this belief that the students can reach the success criteria. And in the moment you place this belief in the middle or in the center of your work, and the parents who are basically sitting on the next side know that you know it and you want it, they keep safe and they are capable of cooperating in very, very different and sometimes very challenging circumstances.
Sure. Thank you very much. Now, if you look back on this process that you have had in the last year, what is one element of surprise in the process, something you did not expect?
Well, probably the response of the weaker students who, through the assessment processes, became known as the weaker ones, and who unpredictably fast transformed and changed into very competent and advanced looking learners. They became more active, self-aware, and the self-study time they had to approach through their homeschooling showed us basically that even some expert teachers might be wrong. So
Actually, I
that was a
heard.
huge surprise, and I'm very pleased to hear the results of the works of some students while talking to my colleagues and listening to these talks during the conferences, because we basically share this knowledge. Can I ask the same question? What was the biggest surprise you had while looking at this process?
Okay, I was about to say that the teachers in Finland said the same thing like you in May, April. Is that the weakest or the problematic kids suddenly become very good at what they did, and you actually might have given some ingredients. They were just happy about it, not researching so much why this happened, but it might be doing with the trust. They felt trust. It also might be doing with some different approaches that allowed them to focus, so they did not feel the stress of timing or answering in a class and so on, of the environment. So those were the things. I don't know if you asked me, because I'm mostly dealing with teachers, not with the kids. But the teachers that were answering like last year, what's going on, and we didn't understand, like, what is this? Looking at what is going on was this. Like, for example, some of the girls did not want to stay online synchronous live. So they prefer the teacher to tell them what they have to do, and would be in Google Classroom but not stay live. So the teacher also had to adapt to these more self-regulated students and not not lose their motivation. Because if they would ask them very tightly, because you also mentioned flexibility, if they would ask the students, no, stay live, stay here with me, then you would lose the ones that are like chop chop, that just want to get things done, and they are already enough self-regulate, and you want to keep them as well. So I don't know if I answered your questions, but these elements, they were
Yes,
elements.
you did.
Okay, good. So last question, Justina, thank you, is you mentioned making space, making time, and you did that by letting go of the things that served you but no longer serve you, and you for this type of education. What did you give up?
Well, homeschooling is actually not a new phenomenon, because in colonial days, families educated children at home, combining the efforts of the parents, elder children, tutors. And it is something that is still happening in the United States. They are allowed to do homeschooling, they do it, it works. There has not been much research done on that because some effects are not very strongly visible. However, it is still working in some families. And at the same time, we have these political leaders who speak endlessly about high standard of education and schools that have to support the students and make sure basically that the standard they offer is according to the references in the European Union, for instance. And students somehow stay behind them. They stay behind the expectation we set when they attend school. So what I gave up was a fear of losing, of making a mistake, and the idea of setting up a standard. I changed the mind in the moment I started observing my students, speaking to them, and I simply made sure to come back to the nature. Very popular slogan nowadays, but in the moment we told the students, because German regulations allow the families to decide whether they can attend school or not, or do homeschooling in these days. They, of course, chose the option mostly to stay at home, but in the moment we offered a school trip in the woods, they all appeared and came back, but only for one day. So that was the moment I realized maybe it's all not about these endless talks of politicians and standard. Maybe it's all about them, and let them be the way they are.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was a very nice and open heart discussion. I think, as said, I met you for just 1 week and we were in a larger group. But now I see you have open mind, as you always did. As before I met you, you have an open heart. You had this moment where you realize that the children have to let be and just trust, and this open the heart and invites the learning through the heart and through the mind and through the will. You are a decisive team leader and a teacher, which means it will take decisions. It will stand by decisions and allow people and students and parents to come in their own time and create space. And that means a decisive leader. Thank you very much. I think the teachers that will join this article and listen to this interview will have a great time of reflection together with you. So thank you very much for that, Justina.
You're welcome.